Hello and welcome. Welcome to a video about the lunar eclipse. The lunar eclipse that will occur the 25th of April 2013, and it will be a lunar eclipse in, the moon will be in Scorpio between 5-6 degrees, and the sun will be in Taurus around 5-6 degrees. So I explained earlier in a video about what eclipses are about and about the importance of knowing to which family, Saros family, they belong. I have put a link, I will put a link beneath so you can watch that video if you haven't done it already. And but this one is a lunar eclipse, so it means that the nodes are involved with this full moon. That the nodes are in Scorpio and in Taurus. So the North node is conjuncting the moon and the South node is conjuncting the sun. So what is this all about? This video is about what is the flavor of this specific lunar eclipse. And so I start with the explanation on the highest level, which is the most important one. And then I fine-tune it a little bit. I go into more detail. But of course, you may not get lost into the detail and focus too much on the detail, because the explanation on the highest level is the most important, and we have to keep that in mind. So let's get started with what does this eclipse mean. But first of all, it is important for people. So everybody has got Scorpio in their charts, but not everybody has got planets around 5-6 degrees of Scorpio. It's also important, your progress planets, to look them up. It's also important to look if you have planets around 5 to 6 degrees of Taurus or progress planets. It's also important to look at the important axis of your chart and even the cusps to a lesser extent. So the cusps of each house, because let's say the cusp of the third house is the front door of the area of your life that has to do with communication, and so on. So really look at the beginning of a cusp, if Taurus is beginning there or Scorpio around 5 to 6 degrees. But of course, if you've got an ascendant around that degree, or a descendant, or midheaven, or an IC, it's even more important. So you can check that out. Now, first of all, eclipses, they belong to a family, and you look back to have the overall explanation. You look back at the very beginning of the birth of that eclipse. That is many, many years ago. I explained that in the other video. And then you just take a picture of that birth and of how the other planets were positioned in the heavens. So what you do is actually you look back at the natal chart of the birth of that eclipse, and you look back at the explanation of that chart. So that's the highest level. After I have done that, I go fine-tuning and I look at the eclipse now on the 25th of April. What are the other planets doing? So let's first go back to the birth of that eclipse. What is the meaning of that eclipse? Bernadette Brady did a book, or wrote a book about that, and did the explanation of every kind of eclipse. Now this eclipse belongs to, it's a number, belongs to 15 South. So the other eclipses on the 10th of May and the 25th of May, maybe I'm going to do videos about that as well, those belong also to 15 South. And the eclipses at the end of the year in October and November belong to another family. It belongs to 16 North. So North and South has to do with the North and the South Pole, where the eclipses do occur. So let's have a look at this eclipse, at the meaning of what Bernadette Brady writes. It's a very, very, very meaningful one, I think. It's a very interesting one. If you have this in your chart happening in conjunctions or in an opposition, and to a lesser extent having planets in Leo or Aquarius around 5 to 6 degrees, because then it squares up to it. Let's have a look. Two things are important here. First of all, Jupiter-Uranus are conjunct the node. So, long time ago when this eclipse was born. This is very positive, of course, because Uranus means all of a sudden, Uranus means liberations, and Jupiter means expansion and growth and meaning and truth, and it's very interesting. The other thing is Pluto, that is on the midpoint of Saturn and the nodes. So there's also a piece of transformation, Pluto, and also a little bit of Saturn, which means, it could mean responsibility, but also the negative side of Saturn is, of course, you know, you want to protect things the way they are, and there is fear involved. So a very interesting mixture there. And the explanation of Bernadette Brady is that it's all about, this eclipse is all about, so on the highest level, letting go of tension. Letting go of tension. So if there was a situation that has been going on for a long time and that had barriers, so in other words, if you were in a situation for weeks or months or even years that has caused a lot of tension, this is the time that the restrictions will be vanished. So there will be no obstacles anymore. All of a sudden they will vanish. All of a sudden is Uranus and the liberation feeling, and Jupiter is the growth. So this is very, very positive. The other explanation, or the next explanation, the second part, is that because of the falling away of the problem, there is also sadness involved. There's also a feeling of sadness and loss, and not so much on a personal level, but more on a collective level, she writes. So, very recognizable, I think, that there's something going on, or this eclipse has the energy of that something will resolve, and for the better, the Jupiter-Uranus, remember the Jupiter-Uranus aspect, conjuncting the nodes. So something will release, and, you know, something that falls off the shoulders, you know, and releasing of the tension, and causing a sense of liberation, and a sense of growth, and a sense of getting up a level, but also with a sense and the feeling of loss, and a sense of sadness. Recognizable. I'll give a couple of examples. I'll give a collective example later on, because she's talking also on about the collective. On a personal level, let's say you have this happening or occurring in your 5th house. So these are just examples, by the way, to make it more practical and more real. It could be that you're a mom and you have a son or a daughter of 18 years old, and they go to college. They go to university, so you have to let go of your role of mom, not let go totally, but less, with the identification of your role as a mom, you know, that Saturn, that responsibility. And so at the end it's very positive, of course, that your child is growing up and it's very liberating, but all of a sudden that moment is there. And off they go, and that gives also a feeling of sadness. So that's one example. Another example could be that it has to do with relationships. Let's say that you were in a procedure of divorce, and it has been a long time, and there had to be things sorted out with the children and all of that. So it's a lot of tension going on, and all of a sudden the papers are done. The lawyers have done their work, and everything is done. Everything is, all of a sudden, you're divorced. It's on paper, black and white. And it's very liberating, and it's very, you know, you feel as if there is a step that you can take. There's a step up, But at the same time, you feel sad. You feel sad because this is a closure of a chapter in your life. You know, maybe with this person, hopefully you also experience good times and good moments, and or maybe just the fact that you feel that you have failed in some kind of way. Of course, you haven't, but that is the feeling. That is that Saturn feeling of letting go and having difficulties with it. So that's on the highest level, the explanation. I'll give an example of the collective in a minute. Now let's fine-tune it a little bit, and so let's get a bit more into depth and into detail. So if you're saying, yeah, that makes sense to me, that this can occur, it's conjuncting my Sun or my Mars or whatever, and yeah, I understand it's in that house, then you can stop the video. If you want a little bit more detail, let's proceed. Now, with a more detail, I mean, let's have a look at what are the signs that it is occurring in, and what are the other planets doing. So the signs this is occurring in is Scorpio. So Scorpio and Taurus. Now, what is the flavor of Scorpio and Taurus? It's fixed sign. Scorpio and Taurus are in general the signs that want stability, and whether it is financial stability or emotional stability, they want stability. It's a rather conservative signs in that way that they really don't like the changes. They really want to protect, and there's nothing wrong with that. And they want to protect what they have because they put so much energy in that, because they are so involved, especially for, I'm talking about Scorpio now, and because the moon will be in Scorpio. So the emotions will, at that moment, around that time, will run deep emotions, sometimes to the extremes. You know, people with moon in Scorpio, normally, unless they have some Gemini or Sagittarius or other air signs or lighter signs in their chart, they really need to feel alive. They really need to, you know, go low at sometimes to be able to go up. So to the very extremes, they really seek that in their life. And so this moon in Scorpio, on a very general collective basis, emotions can run very deep, you know, very strong and deep emotions. Again, nothing wrong with that, but the configuration that is going on at that particular moment isn't the pleasant one. So remember, this sounds a bit negative, but remember the, you know, on the higher level, the Uranus Jupiter thing going on. This is the most important. But let's have a look at what is going on with the planets at that time. The most important thing is that the configuration of Saturn and Mars. So with that moon, Saturn is conjuncting the moon, so it's close to the moon, very close to the moon, and it is opposing Mars in Taurus. This is a nasty aspect, you know. I'm not fond of Mars-Saturn in a combination. In traditional astrology, these are the malefics. And when you put them together, it's not the nicest thing going on. You see this a lot in natal charts, that it's mostly this is a difficult aspect, whether it is even a conjunction or a square or an opposition, because it has to do with suppressed anger and emotions in this case, because that Saturn is conjuncting the moon. Now, what is this all about, this energy? This energy, I think, is for a lot of people, so on an individual level or collective level, it's a lot about trust. Because I see these signs as signs of trust. You know, the Scorpio sign puts so much energy. They put their heart and their souls and their body into something. Because of that, they can't turn back. So that's why change is so difficult for them. So with that is this Scorpio energy, and because of that, because of the resistance to change, then it becomes harder and harder and harder to change. Anyone who's got some planets in Scorpio will understand that. But also people who haven't got anything in Scorpio, by the way, but and who have some empathy. But this is the energy of, if you put so much energy into something and then you want to transform, then you wait at the very, very, very end of it. You wait until 1 minute before 12 o'clock before you make the change. And then the transformation is done. That is all about Scorpio. They wait to the very last moment and they know they have to change something. But that's why it's a transformation. I think the same is going on with this eclipse as well. Now, all of that moon in Scorpio is very much about emotions that are very, very deep, but also very locked. They are stuck. They can't flow. And that's why moon is considered in its detriment in Scorpio. So if you have like a moon in let's say in Pisces, or a moon in Cancer, emotions flow, and that is what emotions should do. They should flow. But with Scorpio, they're all stuck. So they are there, but they are on the inside. Now, putting Saturn with all of this, it makes it even harder. It makes it even more stuck, and it makes it cold. So I think even on a collective level, a lot of coldness will have to come out. A lot of cold, long hidden emotions will have to come out in some kind of way. Why have to come out? Because Mars is involved, and Mars will oppose that moon and Saturn, and it's a very clumsy Mars as well, because Mars is in Taurus. It's like, you know, Taurus is the sign of taking other people into consideration, and Mars is a planet that wants to stand up for itself. It wants to be assertive. If it's a good Mars. And so I expect that people will, in some kind of way, some emotions that have been going on for a long time, as Bernadette Brady is talking about tension, letting go of tension. But probably it will happen in a clumsy way, and it will happen in not always the most beautiful way. I expect. Not for all people, of course, depending on every individual chart, but I expect some tensions that come out in not the best way, because if you consider Mars and Saturn, if you combine them in a positive way, it is a focus. So if you have, let's say, Mars in a trine with Saturn, or let's say a good Mars and Saturn in Capricorn, even in a conjunction, they can do hard work, and they can do work of high concentration or focus. You know, like a surgeon operates on a very small area, or something that you're a writer or anything, and you do this in a very concentrative way. That's the positive thing. But the negative thing is that, and because this is in opposition, I suspect it's rather in a challenging way. The negative thing is that the focus comes too much. You know, anything that is too much is not good. And the focus, when it becomes too much, and especially with Saturn, it comes overprotecting something, over controlling something, and going way too far with that. So probably there will be a lot of people who sense something that they don't want to let go of, and it's very, very protective, and it's very, very focused energy. And because of that Mars, that Uranus on a higher level, all of a sudden something happens and it bursts. So I suspect that for some people this will happen, but remember, don't think that this is wrong or this is bad. It's supposed to be that way, you know, on the highest level. It is for liberating people, because a lot of people have put themselves in situations, work, relationships, whatever, that they have gone too far, that they have let themselves walk all over them way too long. And that is this Mars in Taurus. It really wants to stand up for itself, but it really doesn't know how. So if you want to look the way I explained it on the fine-tuning way, you could say, okay, where is the issue of trust that I'm having? Where is, you know, a bit like Jean-Paul Sartre said, l'enfer, c'est les autres. You know, the hell, those are the other people. Oh, what is the camera doing here? Sorry for that. I hope this is better. So you can have a look and where do I have issues with trust, and you can ask yourself the question on a very personal level, but also go back to the collective. You can ask on a personal level, how was I raised? How was I raised? I'm so sorry about this. How was I raised? Was my mom and dad, were they people that trusted life? Or were they always talking about, you know, you better watch out for this and for that? And then you can go up to the collective level, to the country you live in. And now I come back to the explanation of, on the collective level of this eclipse. I did study economy, and at the last year I made, how is it called, an essay? I made an essay, and it was about the differences in culture that have an impact on doing business and have an impact on the marketing. And the study I did was about different countries, and it was very, very strange to see that Belgium, the country I live in, together with Japan, scored very high when it came to protectionism and when it came to I'll explain better. With protectionism, I mean not wanting any risks in life. So being a bit anti-risks. So having a lot of savings on the bank. Belgium and Japan scored high. They also scored high, by the way, in comparison to other countries of, how do you call that? Suicide. And so fear. That Saturn is very present in these countries. They, so the good thing about Saturn, of course, is anticipating different difficult situations and trying to anticipate them, trying to have some savings for. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just pointing it out, the differences. And it also shows in doing business, you know, the Japanese poker face. Whether they like something or not, you're not going to be able to know it, because there's an issue with trust. And of course, if you look back, especially if you look back to my history of my country in Belgium, you can understand that, you know, there's always a reason. You don't have to look too far, that the Belgians are a bit, you know, they're not the kind of people that trust right away. It's just in their culture. If you compare that to their neighbor country, the Netherlands, they even have the same language. Well, it's another pronunciation, a bit like English and American. But if you look there, these are people of the kind of entrepreneurs. They really love to take risks. They feel very assertive. And they feel very confident. They know who they are, but they are also open to other people. So that's why they get along well in doing business. They are so open and direct. And so in comparison with the Belgians, they're not that open. And, you know, they don't have this assertiveness, you know. And I'm not saying that the Netherlands is a good country and the Belgians is a bad country. On the contrary, it's just an observation. It's just facts. And why do I say this? This is important too, to look at what kind of country you belong, and you know, where does all this come from? And on a collective level, you can also see that there is a lot of fear going on for all kinds of stuff, and there is a lot of how do you say that? Fear. Yes, that's the bad Saturn side of the coin. So it is fear, and it is no life actually, because when fear is involved and control is involved, you really have no life. And that's why sometimes people really think that if people are very controlling and very, you know, they look very dominant and they look as if everything is under control, they're not happy people. And I don't consider them as strong people, but that's an opinion. But so whether it is a collective level, whether it is an individual level, it's the flavor of wanting to protect something that you have to let go of, and but with a certain sadness surrendered with it. And the more you try to fight it, probably the worse. So what is the key word here? It's awareness. It's being aware of what is going on. And you could say awareness, is this helping? Yes, absolutely. But it doesn't mean to say that if you are aware, you can solve the problem right away. You know, it has to grow. Awareness is like a light that shines on certain problems, and then they can be still there, but they're not as heavy to carry with you. And that's making people more happy. That is all about happiness, I think. It's not about being happy. Is not about having luck all the time. It's about knowing what the problems are. You know, you can have some sadness because you've lost somebody or anything, but you can put it into perspective, and you know, you get along with it and you deal with it. And that is the great side of Saturn, you know, that is taking responsibility and being aware of what is going on. So I think a very, very interesting eclipse that is occurring, and if it's happening on certain points or axes, I wish you all the best with it. I'm just checking if I haven't forgotten anything. Yes, with this awareness, awareness can't diminish. So once it is there, it can only do one thing. It can only grow. And the better you understand the situation, I think, the better you can cope with it, and the better you can deal with it. So I should say all the best with the eclipse, and see you soon. Thank you for listening. Bye bye.